sure that those who are responsible,
somebody the kids can relate,
be individuals or groups of individuals, that whatever measures need to be taken will be taken, and consider the United States now on the basis of a war, and go on to that footing and use whatever assets and efforts that are necessary to bring those to justice, and at the same time prevent ever a reoccurrence of a tragedy and a crime of this enormity.
Senator, we've been seeing just for the last couple of minutes some live pictures of injured people arriving at a hospital in New York for treatment there. Obviously, it would appear, based on what we know, that the loss of life is going to be very great indeed. Your sense from knowing the Pentagon and knowing the area where that airplane hit, fire still going over there. Do you have any? What can you tell us about that part of the building? Number of people work there, that kind of thing.
Well, as you know, the Pentagon is a very large building, and which may work to our benefit here, as opposed to the trade towers. I can't make an estimate, but fortunately, the Pentagon is a very large building. So let's pray that the extent of the casualties has been limited by that. Obviously, there's casualties, but what staggers the imagination, as I heard you talking, is the 50,000 people that work at the trade towers. We pray for them and their families, and it's a tragedy that, again, words become inadequate very quickly when describing something of this nature. But I'm sure the President will lead us. I am sure that the President will reassure the American people, and all of us, all Americans, will commit ourselves to making sure that those who committed it pay the heaviest price, whether they be governments or individuals, including governments that may have harbored groups that were responsible for this, and we will make sure that there's never a reoccurrence. And I know that's no consolation to the grieving families, but I don't think we can do more, except I am confident the President of the United States will lead, and the American people can bestow their confidence upon his leadership.
Senator, what you're saying suggests, as others may have mentioned, that life in the United States will not again be the same anytime soon. Would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. And again, it's incomprehensible and reprehensible, and none of us that I know of ever imagined something this enormity, and well orchestrated, obviously.
Senator, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks, Brett.
We now have Brian Wilson, I believe, able to report to us on what he's been hearing. He's up on Capitol Hill. Brian, what are you hearing, buddy?
Well, I'm hearing a lot of things, Britt. One of the things that we're hearing in the last few minutes is from Senator Richard Shelby, who is a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, who told us there has been no advance warning. And they call this very well organized, and he says that they had no advance warning that it was coming at all. And usually they do have some indication from the intelligence community. So very surprised. They say, of course, they know about what happened at the Pentagon. They know about what happened at the World Trade Center. They're still trying to figure out exactly what happened in western Pennsylvania. But members of Congress are coming out and expressing in the strongest terms that the intelligence community failed to give them any advance warning and any kind of information about this, that it caught them completely off guard. One member of Congress, Congressman Kurt Weldon of Pennsylvania, said, the government has failed the people of this country, and that's an indictment on both parties. Britt?
Brian, it does certainly seem that these members of Congress not only had no advance warning, or that the government had no advance warning, they don't seem to know very much about what actually happened, do they?
No, and Senator Shelby said we're still getting briefings, but information is very sketchy and communications are scrambled, an indication that they're not getting a good flow of information, and an overall sense that perhaps more will have to be done to shore up the intelligence budgets in the days ahead, but also, just complete outrage, Britt, that somehow the millions and billions of dollars that we spend on intelligence in this country somehow let this one slip through the cracks.
All right, Brian Wilson, thank you very much. John Scott, that's it from here for the moment. One last note. We learned a few minutes ago that Secret Service agents had sprinted up the street from the White House and cleared people away from a bag that was sitting in the middle of the street there up at the corner of Connecticut Avenue and I Street, right by the Army-Navy Club there in Washington. It turns out apparently that the bag has been found to be harmless. So one more of these false alarms, of which there have been a number, and doubtless will be many more, has been put to rest. John?
All right, Britt Hume in Washington, thank you very much. You are looking at the pictures of what is left of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan. Really not much. These pictures coming to you now live. We're going to show you what happened earlier this morning, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. You can see there are people who are leaning out the windows. At that point, they were hoping for some kind of rescue. There was smoke throughout the building, and they couldn't breathe inside, so they were breaking out the windows of that building and hoping for some kind of rescue. Ultimately, a number of these people simply decided to end their misery and jumped. We are going to get some late information now from Fox producer Dan Cohen, who saw much of this going on. Dan, this is an awful, awful day. What can you add to what we've already seen?
Well, I got here, as you were just saying, and the people jumping out of the buildings, that's about when I arrived. And I'm also an emergency medical technician, so I came down to see if I could help. I identified myself to some of the people that are setting up the medical command.
Nobody knows who is responsible for this. Bob Schieffer talked about rage growing in the upper tiers of government and elsewhere in Washington. It's one thing to have the rage, it's another word to know where to direct that rage, and right now, no one knows. New York police are now saying the number of people killed or injured could be in the thousands from the World Trade Center. Keep coming back to that because we have people calling in and others who say, well, give us the number of people dead or wounded. We would if we could, but we don't know how many are dead or wounded. We go to Jim Stewart in Washington. Jim.
Dan, the government here is still trying to sort out exactly what their contingency plan is going to be. As we reported earlier, they have activated a plan with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which essentially is the plan they would have put in effect had there been a nuclear attack on the United States, a weapons of mass destruction attack. This is a very carefully coordinated plan that calls for the President of the United States to go to one location, for the Vice President to go to another, and for leaders of Congress to be taken to separate locations as well. That is what is going on now as we speak. The government is literally trying to piece itself back together because so many of its vital buildings have been emptied because of the concern here that they too could become a terrorist attack. The FBI and federal law enforcement are still operating under the assumption that this was a terrorist attack. They have no firm evidence who was involved. The obvious suspect is Osama bin Laden. But I have to tell you too, Dan, that there's been speculation about what happened on these aircraft. And the speculation that they have, underlying against speculation, is that no commercial airline pilot, even if he had a weapon pointed at him, would deliberately do what these aircraft did. Therefore, the assumption is that the pilots, the people in control of the aircraft, were the actual people who hijacked these planes. As we reported earlier, Dan, there apparently was communication between the aircraft that were hijacked and the Federal Aviation Administration. It appears that maybe there was just enough time to alert the military that some of these planes had been hijacked. There was not enough time, I know this for a fact, to notify the FBI and its hostage rescue team, which would ordinarily be deployed immediately. So it happened very quickly. The plane, for example, that struck the World Trade Center, we know left Boston. It immediately was diverted. It was outside of its normal path, if you will, from what it should have been, and there was communication back and forth between the aircraft and the FAA. What was said, we do not know. We don't know whether that communication was an announcement that we have taken this aircraft hostage, or we don't know whether it was a plea for help from the pilots themselves. We do know that there was some sort of communication. But the assumption is that if the hijackers took the plane, they had flight training. What does that suggest? it means possibly that they had learned how to fly in the military, that they knew how to fly a jet aircraft, at least well enough to do what they did. Does that suggest that this was the work of a nation, something other than a terrorist organization? No one here knows yet. It will be a long time before that evidence is clear. I will tell you, Dan, no one to our knowledge has thus far claimed credit for this attack, and the FBI is pretty much got this thing under wraps. They're simply not saying anything right now. In fact, if you call the FBI, you can't reach them. They have all gone to their strategic command center inside the building, and this city is locked tight while it decides how to put the government back into place. Dan?
As you see this picture live in New York, in the middle right-hand corner of your screen, the Statue of Liberty. Lady Liberty overlooking the worst attack on the mainland United States in the history of the country. In the shadow of the Statue of Liberty, a direct attack on the freedom of every American and the freedom of every freedom-loving person anywhere. That is not too strong a statement. At least three hijacked planes crashed into U.S. landmarks today, destroying both of New York's Twin Towers, the World Trade Centers, 110 stories up. They were each just beyond the Empire State Building, which is dominating your screen at the moment with the smoke from the collapsed Twin Towers, both towers down now. The Pentagon was plunged into flames in an unprecedented assault on the key symbols of U.S. military and financial power. This videotape of the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings, the loss of life is expected to be catastrophic. There's no other word to describe the expectation of the loss of life from the collapse of the giant towers, where some 50,000 people work, and that says nothing of the people who work around those buildings. 50,000 people on the average day work in the buildings, and in the immediate vicinity, many more thousands work around it. The two 110-story buildings collapsed one at a time in a huge cloud of smoke and fire about 2 hours after the initial impacts. Those of you who have been with us know this, those who joining may not. First, one airplane hit one tower, then incredibly, inconceivably, almost unbelievably, another airplane hit the other tower. President Bush has called the deliberate aerial assaults, quote, an apparent terrorist attack. He has, of course, ordered full-scale investigation. The president, last report, was flying from Florida, where he was on a visit, back to an unknown destination. There certainly is a school of thought in Washington that runs he should return immediately to the White House, the symbol of stability and all that we hold dear, and walk right into the White House and take command there. Another school of thought is, well, that may not be such a good idea. We'll see where he goes. In the meantime, Vice President Dick Cheney is in charge at the White House in the Situation Room. New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani said there has been, quote, a horrendous number of lives lost in the assault on this city. These are the worst attacks on the U.S. mainland in modern history. You'd have to go back to the Civil War for anything approaching it. That's not too strong a statement. Certainly this is not on the order of the Civil War, but for an attack on the American mainland, not in the 20th century, nor in the early stages of this, the 21st century, has been an attack such as this. And I'm going from memory here, but Abraham Lincoln once said, speaking of how America had never been invaded, that said Lincoln, one cannot imagine the footprints of an enemy in the Appalachians, or an enemy drinking from the Ohio. But what we've seen and heard today in these horrifying scenes come as close to that as we've ever had in this country. Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and gunmen at refugee camps in Lebanon are reported to have fired in the air to celebrate news of the attacks. Hospitals here in New York are overwhelmed with patients as that massive cloud bellows into the skies, but also the smoke can clearly be smelled in places such as St. Vincent's Hospital, where they're just overwhelmed. Hundreds of people are burned from head to toe, according to Dr. Stephen Stern at St. Vincent's Hospital in the Greenwich Village neighborhood of Lower Manhattan. The whole of Lower Manhattan is coated with a half-inch of dust. Lee Cowan is live in that tip of Manhattan now covered by smoke, Lee?
Hi, Dan. Perhaps a firefighter summed this up really the best way. He said that, frankly, you're looking at ghosts down here. What his fear is that the command post, at least the first command post that was set up after the first explosion, was just to the west of the north tower. And what he fears now is that they were right in the line as that building collapsed some hour and a half ago. Now, he said those are some of the best, some of the brightest folks that know exactly how to work this kind of search and rescue effort. Some of the logistics, who to put where and why, and he hasn't heard from them since. That's what he's worried about the most. Excuse me. We talked to the building manager of the World Trade Center just a short while ago. He said while he was on his floor trying to evacuate people, he got out of the building about a second before it collapsed. He said just on the floor that he was trying to evacuate people on, there were hundreds and hundreds of people trapped as it collapsed. He barely got out. He doused the people inside, made it much any better than he did. We talked to a person just a short while ago who said he actually tried to run into the building. Didn't work there, was passing by, trying to rescue as many people as he could. He's now been taken to the hospital because he has some injuries with his lungs. A lot of stories like that out here, Dan, that we're hearing. People going in, trying to do their best, but at this point, there seems like there's so little left of the building. We can't get much closer now than about a block away, which is where we were about 5 minutes ago. But clearly, everybody here is worried exactly what's going to be found, excuse me, underneath the rubble when they get down there, Dan. Yeah.
Lee Cowan, where the smoke permeates the air, a horrendous act of terror has in a matter of minutes changed the most famous skyline in the world. No one will ever look at this skyline again in exactly the same way. These attacks have forced evacuation of all government buildings in Washington, including the White House and other tall buildings across the country. And we're told, say, the evacuation of the White House, we're told that Vice President Cheney with Condoleezza Rice, who's head of the National Security Council, are in the Situation Room of the White House, which has its own special security. Cell phone communications on the East Coast have been severely interrupted, and you are urged not to make cell phone calls, particularly unless you absolutely have to. All commercial aircraft have been grounded in the United States. We were told earlier that Canada had ordered a grounding of aircraft in Canada. The New York City primary election for mayor was called off today. Stock markets are closed. World leaders are expressing shock and horror. Foreign financial markets fell sharply on news of these attacks. The key London investment index plummeted a little over 5%. Oil prices went up by 3%. U.S. markets were closed. Go back to Harold Dow as we look at these scenes from Lower Manhattan. Harold, the bravery, the heroism of the police and firemen who plunged into this extremely dangerous situation needs to be noted.
Well, there's no question, Dan. When I arrived on the scene, I ran into one of the police officers that I knew there, Cliff Hollingsworth. He was trying to get me to some areas, and I know when the building started coming down, he ran in one direction and I ran in the other. But these firemen, these rescue people who were there, these men and women came in to help try to save lives. And I suppose they were looking for other explosions, but I don't think anyone thought at that point that this tremendous building would come crashing down so quickly. I mean, as you saw from the video we just looked at, the heavy steel girders of part of that building and the concrete all crashing down with the dust, landing on these people who were trying to save lives inside those buildings.
And we've noted before the distinct possibility that there may still be people trapped inside the debris of these collapsed buildings. That we'll have to see. Now, this just in, President Bush, we're now told, is to make a statement. This would be his second statement of the day from Barksdale Air Force Base in Louisiana. Now, that's, at Shreveport, Louisiana. Now, if you're asking, well, we thought the president was flying back to Washington from Florida. That was the widespread assumption, but assumption is the mother of a lot of erroneous reporting. And in this case, the assumption proved to be incorrect because the president, for reasons explained, but no doubt will be explained. Flew from Florida to Barksdale Air Force Base outside Shreveport, Louisiana, and we're told that the President will make a statement from Barksdale Air Force Base shortly. We, of course, will carry that as part of our continuing CBS News live coverage. Dan Rather at CBS News World Headquarters in New York with one of our most experienced and distinguished correspondents, Harold Dow, who was on scene down in the Wall Street area, came back here covered with soot, debris, smoke. We could not get a remote unit down in that part of the city to broadcast. Wouldn't have been a good idea to do it even if we could in retrospect. And Harold has come back to fill us in with eyewitness reports. We had Carol Marine came in earlier with moving and detailed, accurate eyewitness reports. As we contemplate all that, we go to Bob Orr in Washington with more information. Bob?
Yeah, Dan, we're getting some of the first official